Continuing education knows that at the end, students want to graduate, and we can help them do that because we take the time to really listen to their needs, and we understand all the different options that are available across the campus for them.
We don't take a cookie cutter approach. We realize each student comes with their own story. So whether it's a part-time student looking to complete a degree program or someone just looking for online courses, we're there to connect them to the resources of the university.
Has not been an investment in
Welcome everybody to this panel on humor.
So nice to see you here. Thank you so much.
This panel is titled, What's So Funny? And the description is, how does an audience respond to humor? Humor as a universal language that all can respond to, which I think is seriously sus, word salad. But I'm pretty sure a human wrote it, because I think any chatbot would know what an audience would normally do when there's humor. That is to laugh if you're doing it right. So anyways, my name is Philip Ogren. I live here in Boulder. I have a podcast called Sharing Boulder. I'm a local political activist who's a housing advocate. I also do a lot of stand-up comedy around town on a regular basis. We're going to start off today with a land acknowledgement. But first, for recording purposes, today is April 11th, 2024. It is 12 p.m. And this is panel 17964, titled, What's So Funny? The University of Colorado Boulder, Colorado's flagship university, honors and recognizes the many contributions of indigenous peoples in our state. CU Boulder acknowledges that it is located on the traditional territories and ancestral homelands of the Cheyenne, Arapaho, and Ute, and many other Native American nations. Their forced removal from these territories has caused devastating and lasting impacts. While the University of Colorado Boulder can never undo or rectify the devastation wrought on indigenous peoples, we commit to improving and enhancing engagement with indigenous peoples in issues locally and globally. We will do this by recognizing and amplifying the voices of indigenous CU Boulder students, staff, and faculty in their work, educating, conducting research, supporting student success and integrating indigenous knowledge, consulting, engaging, and working collaboratively with tribal nations to enhance our ability to provide access and culturally sensitive support, and to recruit, retain, and graduate Native American students in a climate that is inclusive and respectful. One other thing I'd like to mention is that we want to be sure you get a chance to ask questions. Here's how we'll handle the Q&A. We'll reserve the end of the discussion for that Q&A. We're using a note card system to receive questions from the audience. At any time in the session, simply raise your hand to request a note card and pencil from one of our producers. Please write legibly. If you are a student, please note this in your question on the card. When you finish, raise your hand to hand it to the producer, who will bring it up to me. I urge everyone to please make your questions brief and to the point. And so now we are going to do some quick introductions, and then we'll have the panelists introduce yourselves. So, man, I'm really excited about today's panel on humor. I was interviewing a local comedian last fall who's also an activist, and we were talking about the power of comedy. And and this has been pointed out by many others at different times, but I think it's worth repeating. He said that in 5 minutes with good comedy, you can open up someone's hearts and minds to your point of view in a way that's just not possible with other kinds of communication. Think about the hours it takes of posting and tweeting and reposting and replying, and how many hours does it take to change somebody's mind about anything? And the challenge you all have been given today is you have 1 hour to change hearts and minds by talking about humor. So honestly, I'm not super hopeful because I read through your bios and you people are serious AF. So Okay, for example, Lisa Graves, she battles corruption by exposing special interest groups as the executive director of True North Research, which sounds pretty effing serious, I have to say.
It's true.
Lisa has a book coming out in 2025 on John Roberts. I asked her if it was funny, and she said, yeah, if you like gallows humor. Let's see, we have Eli Hans, sorry. He battles apathy and negativity as a transformational theater coach at Out of the Blue Productions in Mexico. Matt Williams, who is not known for changing hearts and minds so much as turning an entire generation into a boob tube watching couch potatoes, with shows such as Roseanne, Home Improvement, The Cosby Show, A Different World, among others. And then Tai Tashiro is a bow tie wearing psychologist. I don't know where your bow tie is today, but who wrote the awkwardly titled book, Awkward, The Science of Why We Are Socially Awkward and Why That Is Awesome, which is a book title that I seriously hope was generated by ChatGPT. Tai has been described by his producer not so much as funny, but mildly amusing. So thank you for being on the panel. Okay, so now I'm going to give each of you 3 or 4 minutes to introduce yourselves. Here are the instructions I was given. If a panelist starts to run over the allotted time, gently flash a visual indication that they should begin to conclude. So I'm warning you now, if you go over your time, I will flash you gently. We're going to do the stand-up comedy thing here, where I'm going to give you 3 minutes and then a light, and that gives you 1 minute to wrap it up. So, Lisa, take it away.
Oh my goodness, the pressure's on. Thank you so much for coming out for this panel. When I was thinking of how to introduce myself, I thought I would tell you a story about when I was fighting the reauthorization of the Patriot Act. Doesn't sound funny, but it gets funnier. At a certain point before Thanksgiving, Senator Reid, obviously when he was still alive, had blocked the Patriot Act from being reauthorized. And I saw him the next day at the grocery store. I had not gone for groceries for like a week or so. My friend said, let's go, we're gonna go to Trader Joe's. I'm feeling rebellious. I put on a t-shirt that says, stop bitching and start a revolution. Start a revolution was kind of under the bosom. But I rarely wear words, and you'll soon know why. But I had this, and so then I put on a little hoodie, and we're at Trader Joe's, and I see Senator Reid, and he says, Lisa, thank you so much for all of your efforts on civil liberties. And I said, Senator Reid, thank you so much for all of your efforts on civil liberties. And then his wife made a beeline to us. And she comes up and she grabs him by the elbow and she turns away and she said, Harry, I need your opinion on soup. And I thought, what the hell, right? What did I do? Like, I was not coming on to Senator Reid, just for the record, in case you have any doubt. I looked down, and my hoodie had made my t-shirt say, top bitch. Oh my God, I zipped up. I ran to find my friend. She was in a different section, not the soup section. I unzip and I explain the story, and she says, listen, Lisa, Harry Reid was not looking at she said the word tits. I was like, no, but the word. She said, no, what? He didn't even notice. I'm sure you're fine. Just relax, calm down. Let's check out and get out of here. So, we check out, we get home. I bring my groceries in. I look at the mirror, I unzip, and all you can see when you see me is top bitch. So then I call my friend who was working for Senator Feinstein, and I tell her the story, and she said, Lisa, you are the top bitch. So my name is Lisa Graves, and I am the top bitch.
Wonderful. Yeah, go ahead, Eli.
Well, I'm Eli Hans, and I have absolutely no idea why I'm on this panel. I'm Jewish. We suffer. It's generational. I mean, after 40 years being lost in the desert, and it was only a 200-mile trek. It's like the anxiety of 40 years comes down generations, and I can't even look at a GPS now. It's true. No. One of the things that I love about humor is what our wonderful moderator said, is that it really does disarm people, and it unifies us, and it opens our hearts. I'm learning through a show that I'm doing called Out of the Blue. It deals with some pretty heavy-duty things, and yet there's a lot of humor in the show because it makes the information just more easy to digest. When we're all laughing together and we're sharing something like that, our hearts open up, and then we're able to commune as one. So I'm really curious to see, what we're going to end up talking about today. Thanks for having me.
Great. I believe humor has the power to heal individuals as well as communities, because obviously when you're laughing, it releases all those wonderful chemicals we know about, endorphins, et cetera. But how do you find the funny? I teach a pilot writing class at Columbia that is a comedy class. And what's so apparent is you can't teach someone how to be funny. I really believe when you come out of the womb, God bonks you on the head with a comedy stick and instills some sense of humor, because there's a part of your brain that's always looking for the funny. And writers will attest to this. True writers, even in the midst of something, there's a part of your brain that's slightly detached and you're observing. I will give you a personal example. Every single argument my wife and I had during the home improvement years became episodes. We would be going, God, why did you, and how could you, and throwing pillows. And a part of my brain's going, oh, that's good, that's good. And so I don't know where that came from. Now, the irony is I'm the oldest of 4 children, old children, and I'm the least funny of all of them, but I've made my living writing comedy. But I want to give you an example. Last week, this happened with my wife, and this is where, if you observe, you can always find the funny. My wife, one morning, sat me down at the kitchen table with a cup of tea and said we need to have a serious discussion about dish towels. And I looked at her, and I said, what? And she says, you're really rough on the dish towels. And I went, I dry dishes with them. I wipe down counters. And she goes, yes, but you wrinkle them and you stain them, and they're from Italy. So, God's truth, I've been put on dish tile probation. I can only use the raggedy, tattered ones on the bottom drawer. And so the other day when she was having it, I went, okay, if I was still writing, that might be a scene in Home Improvement. So.
I have a question. Is your wife here?
No, and she's not watching, so I'm safe. I'm safe. I'm safe.
As a psychologist, I find humor to be a good way to work through psychological blocks. I'll share my big block right now, which is how uncomfortably attractive my optometrist is. So I was just there 2 weeks ago. She is, my God, stunningly attractive, and having hot people in your life is usually okay. This is not an okay kind of situation. And she was... I immediately felt my heart rate kind of accelerate, and I was feeling like all those arousal things you feel. And I thought to myself, this is so inappropriate, Ty. Now the liberal, progressive part of my brain kicks in. I'm like, this is objectifying. What's wrong with you? And we get to talking, and she's super cool too. And so she's from Iran. Her family fled. They're like freedom fighters fighting the man. And took off to the United States, and she's still politically active and doing important things. And I thought, that's so hot, fighting for freedom. And so now I'm like, once again, the progressive side, like, Ty, you can't, that's not good. Well, something that happens sometimes is, and this is a very nice compliment, people will say, hey, you wrote this book on awkwardness. People said it was kind of a memoir. I don't see you as socially awkward. I'm like, well, just wait. And this is certainly what happened here. So we went through the regular eye exam, right? And she's saying, can you read this line? Can you read that line? And things are going pretty well. Then she puts that kind of overlay, right, on your eyes, number 1, number 2, A, B, and we're doing that. And now it happens, so I've been doing really good up to this point, getting the bottom line. But now, it's blurry. And I'm like, what is happening here? And now I can't even see the middle line, and I'm now just to the top line. And I thought I was having like acute onset glaucoma or something like that. And she was so elegant, yet another attractive thing. So elegant in this moment, she just said in the calmest voice possible, "You can breathe normally." And so my desire was so hot and heavy, it was fogging the lenses. And she just real nonchalant pulled out a towel and wiped away my desire from the lenses. So I think even when we try sometimes, right, we can't help ourselves. But that's been top of mind, so hopefully we can work through that a little bit today.
That's great.
That was wonderful. How about a warm welcome to our panelists?
Ty, I just want to say, if it ever happens, you know what's great about making love with an optometrist?
Oh, please do tell.
Is that she'll probably say, "You like it like this or like this?" One or two. You can look forward to that.
Perfect.
Brilliant. That was lovely.
All right, well, I'm going to kick this off with the question that everybody came here to have answered. And that is, how does an audience respond to humor?
Hope they laugh.
I thought that might be funny, but it's in the title,
That's a serious question.
We can move right along. If you want. Yeah. All right, how about this? The world is saturated with funny content. So why do we, as like regular people, need humor?
I think the world is saturated with funny content, even in my world of exposing corruption. Like, you might not think that Justice Samuel Alito is funny. Certainly not funny since he wrote the Dobbs ruling and it was very humorless and filled with disinformation. But, when he was confronted with the fact that he had taken a private jet to a private, party to go salmon fishing in Alaska, he responded in a way in the Wall Street Journal editorial page and generally in a way that, you might consider funny. He said there just happened to be an extra seat on the private jet. I mean, who knew? He was hilarious. If only we could all just hang out at the private jet, area, and when there's an open seat, we're just going in the direction, and we don't have to be a Supreme Court justice to get there. But then the other funny part was the journalists who uncovered that story, they had this photo of Sam Alito holding this big salmon up next to one of the billionaires next to the guide, and I was like, that's funny. Who's the trophy? See, there is humor in it. Yeah.
That's great. Repeat the question? Because that was so funny, I lost my train of thought.
Thanks, man. Thanks.
Well, we could move on too from that. Yeah,
I'm serious.
Why do regular people need humor when in a world saturated with content?
Because
That's
the
funny.
fact that we're all laughing right here in this room means we're all connecting.
Yes.
On some way. You talked earlier about expanding the soul. When you laugh, it opens your heart, it expands your soul. And you get a lot of people laughing, all their hearts are kind of opening and their souls are expanding. And I really believe the primary purpose of storytelling is to sensitize the tribe, but more importantly, is to remind us of our connectedness to our fellow human beings. And so for years, when people would go, "Oh, it's only a sitcom," I go, yes. But if you have 8, 10, 12 million people, this is appointment TV back in the network days, sitting down at the same time across the country laughing at something, wow, that's powerful. And I really do believe humor has not only the ability to soften the message, make the medicine go down a little easier, but it really does have the power to heal. And one sidebar, most of my students, well, all my students are graduate students, but they're from all over the world. From China, from Mexico City, from Quebec, and different backgrounds. And what's fascinating to me is when you get 12 graduate students in a room, and the more specific the story becomes and the character becomes, the more universal it becomes. Mm-hmm. So in that sense, that is really connecting those students who are from diverse parts of the globe. And I find that fascinating because funny is funny is funny. Mm-hmm. The only thing I don't like is when humor is used as a weapon, when it's designed or the intention is to hurt, to demean, belittle. And there's been a trend in this snarky kind of humor, which I instantly turn it off, because the rule for me through 40 years of doing this was to ridicule without pain. And that's like holding up the mirror and let's all laugh at our foibles and our frailties, as opposed to you're wrong for what you believe. And that's not funny. That's the instant turn off from me. So I don't know if I answered your question, but
That's great. Thank you so much.
You know, one of the things I was thinking about is why is comedy doing so well
yeah.
right now, right? It's kind of a golden age of comedy in some ways with all the Netflix specials and HBO specials, which makes me wonder why now are we so in need of comedy? And one of the things I might also say is that in a time when we feel so much trepidation about saying truths or saying our opinions, comedy is this wonderful release where we can have somebody else say it for us, right? And say, oh yeah, I was thinking the same thing, and get that relatability, right? And I don't consider myself a comedian, but as I hear comedians talk about the craft, I oftentimes hear two criterions. Some will say, well, is it funny? That's the main thing, and I can appreciate that. But the other thing I'll oftentimes hear is they'll say, is it true? Which I love as well. And to me, that's a super powerful, right, a mechanism of comedy that maybe it allows us to speak about truths that otherwise we would be too uncomfortable to talk about.
I just dovetail onto that because my rule through all the years of working in TV was take what's truthful and exaggerate it. And then you've got comedy. If you're just being wacky for wacky's sake, you kind of check out. But if you find that truthful, relatable behavior and then exaggerate it, then it usually works.
Exactly, yeah.
Well, and it's a reflection of our life, right? And when it's delivered through comedy, then we're better able to kind of take a look at it without feeling challenged by it. We can kind of laugh at ourselves. Self-deprecating humor can be wonderful. I also really love smart humor, you know, when we're seeing comedy that actually is giving you something, and not just for the laugh, but really bringing a point of view that's delivered through the comedy that makes you shift your perspective about the world. Right. That's the power of comedy.
Amen. So we have some note cards with great questions coming in. Please fill those out and hand them to the producers. Here's the one that I really like. Do you think prehistoric people had a sense of humor?
Well, look at the cave drawings. No. I would bet I'm sure Og did a pratfall around the, in the cave to get people to laugh. I think there had to be some sense of humor of that. I think so. I mean,
I think it's innately human. I mean, besides hyenas, we're the only other animals that laugh on this planet, right? Yeah.
I was thinking about, how does humor translate? There was a humor panel yesterday, and Michael was talking about how there were comedians here in the U.S. that the people in England don't know about. There are comedians in England that we don't know about. Like, how much is humor cultural? And I had some vague recollection of a theater teacher having us read Aristophanes' The Frogs. It's a comedy. Wasn't funny. It was Greek. It was in Greek, it was in English, it really didn't translate. And then I realized I had my own sort of the frogs moment when I tried to teach my friend from Chile a knock-knock joke. And I said, we're at the stage of the friendship where I can share jokes, So I said, knock-knock, and she just looked at me like I was insane. And so I said it again, knock-knock, and she looked at me again. And I said, you're supposed to say, who's there? And she said, what kind of joke is this? And I said, there are no knock-knock jokes in Chile? What? Who knew? I didn't even know. So I became an ambassador for the knock-knock joke in Chile. But I didn't succeed because then I said, okay, so I say knock-knock, you say who's there, and then, I say, and I repeat. So I said, knock-knock, and she said, who is there? And it was so sincere, I just couldn't finish the joke. So I failed in my ministry toward the nation of Chile.
I think the cavemen had bang-bang jokes. They were like, bang, bang.
Yeah.
All right, here's another one. For all, how can humor help us to heal our political divisions?
Well, I think that goes back to intention, which I talked about the other day on the story panel. Is the humor intended to demean the other side, belittle them, to prove what idiots they are? And when you have red state, blue state, you have rural versus city, there is a tendency to demean the other side and to ridicule with pain. I'm sorry, to ridicule with pain, as opposed to I would always give the note in every series I worked on. I said, delight in the argument, because there's a certain delight in those serpentine arguments. If you take the delight away and it becomes an attack, then it's not funny. And I see this in a lot of political shows where it's just designed to demean, and I just check out again. But I don't know how you do that, because I can't do political humor.
That reminds me of Jon Stewart after he had left the Daily Show the first time. And a few years later, they said, do you have any regrets about the Daily Show? And he said, I really regret the evisceration. You know, which we all, I included, right? It was really funny, I have to say. But it kind of can get us in some bad habits, right? As funny as it might be, and as much as it's criticizing a viewpoint that we find toxic or offensive, it doesn't help our broader discourse. So it can help, I think. I totally agree. It can help loosen things up and open our minds a bit, but we can also use it in ways that kind of work against us sometimes as well.
I'm gonna take the black sheep approach here, I confess, which is that I think that humor can help shed light on some really absurd claims, political claims, and I think that exposing them as humorous is part of my way of dealing with just the horror of what some of these proposals are. And so, you know, I, with all due respect, Matt, I don't want to offend you or have you check out, but I do think that most people don't share some of these very extreme views. In fact, I think most Americans are actually really pretty reasonable and really want, you know, the country to work well. They want their families to be happy and safe. They want their kids and parents to be healthy. They don't want, you know, this sort of rush toward extremism, but there is a bit of a rush toward extremism. And, you know, one of the things I've been looking at is this Heritage Project 2025. I don't know if you've heard of it. Again, not necessarily a comedy, a comedic thing, but when you look at it, when I look at it, I just think this is amazing. They plan, if there's at the next Republican presidency, to implement a set of agendas, including putting 20,000 of the most hardcore activists into government. But then when you look at the policies, it includes, you know, a real hostility toward gay marriage, and you know, not recognizing gay marriage, et cetera. And I just think I saw a meme and I just thought it was funny, and I just have to share it because it touched me. This idea that if you oppose gay marriage, it's like your moral view, and you get to impose that on other people, like that's radical, and it makes me very nervous, so I want to laugh about it. I do want to see it as humorous to try to, you know, discount it. But, you know, someone said, it's like me being on a diet and saying you can't have a cookie. You know, like why should we accept this situation in which some people think they get to believe something that's fine, but they want to use the law to impose on us? And I feel like there has to be some humor in responding to those sorts of extremes, because otherwise it's just like serious versus serious. How do you resolve that? How do you ever get through that? But I think most people think live and let live. You know, if you don't want to have a gay marriage, don't have one. You know, that's my view. Not so funny. Sorry about that.
I agree with that.
Someone told me recently that they didn't like comedy because they don't like the way it pulls them into thinking and laughing about things they don't want to be thinking and laughing about.
Oh, I failed.
Yeah. No, I mean, so like to your point, it's really important that we draw people in. Okay, next question is, maybe this, Matt, you could start with this one. What is the difference between writing comedy for a live audience versus a TV audience versus a print audience?
Wow. The TV I did, we always had a live audience, and I came out of theater, so my training was as a theater artist. So the one thing about comedy is it's always truthful. When you're standing in the back of the theater and people don't laugh, it's pretty apparent, right? And so writing TV for me was the same as writing comedic plays, which is how I got started. Writing on print, when I shifted to the book that I just wrote, and they are humorous. It's called Glimpses, a comedy writer's take on life, love, and all those spiritual things. I had to imagine all the authors on here in the room and up here will say, think of who is the one reader, right? Mm-hmm. So when I was writing the book, it was my sister, and she's in her 60s, great sense of humor. So I always thought, if I can make Beth laugh, I think other people will laugh, and it worked, and it's very humorous, and so that helped me focus my writing to my audience. So,
Ty, Eli?
Well, I haven't really written for print, comedy for print, and actually, what's funny to me is that some of the things I'm serious about, people laugh at. Mm-hmm. They weren't intended to be funny because I was serious, and yet they find it funny. And I thought, oh, isn't that curious, right? And yet I just decided that, again, the experience I'm speaking about is the show that I'm currently doing, because it's the first time I've actually written something that I'm performing in and seeing the immediate response from an audience. Oh, they're laughing at this and they're not laughing at that. And you know what's really curious? I'm sure you're going to agree with this. Every audience is completely different. Yep. Last night, they laughed at everything. Tonight, they're not laughing at things. And yet they laughed at this one weird line that wasn't funny. So that always I find it to be so curious about what energy happens in an audience. And often when audiences aren't cracking up laughing, the feedback at the end is, I loved your show, it was so funny. I was like, why weren't they laughing out loud? So that whole thing is still very new to me, but all I can say is when you share a good laugh with a friend, it's like when you're sharing that good laugh with an audience, there's nothing better than that.
Yeah, I so prefer to do it live, because you do get that immediate feedback. There's either a laugh or there isn't. It's just one of the great things in life, in this abstract world we live in, is this really pure thing. Either people laugh or they don't, and that's immediate feedback for you to change it. When you're writing about it, you do have to do this imaginary kind of thing, and you're like, I hope these people who eventually get this will find this funny. One of my solutions was my poor friends would get workshopped, right? And so I particularly love the friends who don't give courtesy laughs. And they'll just stare you down, and that was not funny. Probably my best person I picked was my grandma, who was 102. And if she doesn't think it's funny, she'll just stone face you, But if you could get grandma to laugh, then it's good material.
That's good.
I haven't written a play or a TV show, but I'm learning from my fellow panelists, and it's lovely to hear.
I learned a long time ago not to workshop jokes with my wife, because it just ruins it when I explain them to her, and then when I perform them, she already knows the punchlines. It's just like, it's totally wasted.
I had proposed to I didn't propose to him, he proposed to me, but I had proposed a solution for our arguments. We've been together more or less for like 38 years or something, and we have ties. I don't know if any of you ever had a tie. We don't have a mechanism for breaking a tie because there's only two of us and, even numbers. And so I proposed, after many disagreements about, how to resolve ties besides just giving in, I proposed the basketball, bonus thing. It just flips and on this, we'll just have an arrow, and then I'm right, on this one, when it doesn't matter what it is, because I get the bonus. We've had 5 ties, and then we'll flip the arrow, and then and I was like, this is such a reasonable idea. It will solve so many problems. And he said, no, because the arrow doesn't know the quantity, the quality of the disagreement, because you might win on a big one, and then I might win on a small one. So we still have no tie-breaking mechanism. If you have one, let me know.
But Lisa, the good news is the longer you're married, the shorter your arguments. Right?
That's true.
Because it used to be, why did you leave the milk out? You know it's going to go bad. I'm going to have to go to the store and buy milk. You go, oh, okay, I get it. You want me to put the milk away. So it gets shorthanded.
I think the perfect answer to your question is just agree in your marriage that you're always right.
I've proposed that.
Yeah.
That was not a unified agreement.
My wife and kids laugh when I tell dad jokes. How can I know that they're laughing with me or at me? And does it matter?
They're laughing at you.
Yeah, definitely.
handwriting is a little difficult, but it says, can you speak about Norman Lear's influence? Archie Bunker, Maude.
Well, I can't really speak to it. It was groundbreaking. It was audacious. It would never exist today. And at the time, he broke all the barriers. Actually, if I'm not mistaken, Archie Bunker.
Time out. Could you give someone really young like me a little brief history lesson?
Oh, yes, I forgot. Not everyone's 73. Okay. Yeah, that's my problem in my class. The TV shows I reference, none of them were born when they were popular. So
That's crazy.
yeah, Archie Bunker was politically incorrect, attacked racism. He was a chauvinist, he was a racist, but it was done to such an extreme that it was humorous. And you were laughing not with him, but at him. And, you know, the classic moment is he was so racist with the Sammy Davis Jr. episode when he was leaving the Bunker house, turned and kissed Archie on the cheek. And I think the audience must have laughed for 2 minutes solid because he had just popped that bubble of racism with that one moment. And because Archie Bunker's corrosive worldview was so extreme, the audience didn't need a line or a joke. All he had to do was look up, and people started laughing. So, and obviously there's good times. The shows that Norman Lear spun off all had a political bent, but his intention was to poke holes in the pretense, the racism, the misogyny, you know. And God, he just died recently, 98 or whatever it was.
Thank you for that.
100.
Oh,
Any-
was it?
any other-
100? Only 100, okay.
Any other follow-ups on that? No.
I just think he was a genius and you know, so progressive. And not only did he write and produce these amazing path-breaking comedies, but he also devoted a lot of his efforts to funding nonprofit organizations like
Yes.
People for the American Way and other groups to really advance these progressive ideals. And so just an honor to have walked on this earth at the same time as someone as amazing as Norman Lear.
It's cool. It's a neat planet we walk on. Are there Israel and Palestinian comedians you've seen working to address and heal the genocidal crisis?
I've not seen it. I don't know how you mine comedy from that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It would be fascinating if someone could, but you feel the energy in the room change as soon as
Yeah.
you say that, because
Yeah.
I don't know how you find the funny in that.
There's no funny there.
So this one's related. As a public communicator on difficult and controversial topics in global affairs, how can I use comedy to disarm and speak to people on both sides?
You perhaps overestimate me. You know, I don't know. I really do try to think about the fact, like I said before, that at the end of the day, most people, regardless of their political beliefs, actually want the same things. You know, they really want to have some economic security. They want to have jobs or work or hobbies that are meaningful. They want their kids to be healthy and succeed and thrive, and they don't want their parents to be, you know, locked away in a substandard, you know, retirement home. Like, you know, these are universal traits, and I think it's, you know, universal across the globe. People are yearning, they yearn for peace, they yearn for security, and so I try to think about that when I am face to face with someone who disagrees with me. And then sometimes I fail and sometimes I succeed, and then sometimes it becomes a sort of a good story, like Paul Weyrich, who founded the Heritage Foundation with funding from Joseph Coors, who I didn't know why I didn't like Coors beer. I'm an outlier here. I like Fat Tire, but I grew up in Colorado, never really liked Coors, didn't know that his brother called him right to the right of Attila the Hun. And I really didn't even know who Paul Weyrich was until I was leading this Patriot Act coalition, and we had it was a right-left coalition. We had Muslims and Jewish Americans and Christian Americans and Catholics and civil libertarians and peace activists, Quakers, all coming together for the Patriot Act reform. And then I got a call one day from Paul Weyrich, the founder of the Heritage Foundation, the guy who said that we don't want more people to vote when he was talking to a white evangelical office. We want less people to vote because when more people vote, we lose power. That dude, he was in the coalition, and I was, dealing with him as a coalition member, and he called me and he said, Lisa, you have to kick out all the Muslims from this coalition. And I said, that's not going to happen, Paul. He laughed, and I said, no, I'm serious. Like, that is not going to happen. And he said, well, you have to kick them out. We can't have Muslims in the coalition. And I said, you know what's going to happen? You're being kicked out of the coalition. I thought it was funny. I told my friend, but to have that bigotry and to have him think that he could intimidate me as a powerful right-wing leader to make me exclude a whole group of people based on their religion, a religion that is predominantly focused on peace and care and concern, I just said no. I don't know how Paul told that story. I'm not sure his perspective on it, but then I had the chance to tell other coalition members, look, Paul's no longer part of this coalition, and this is what happened. And I wish that we could bridge that divide, but one of the divides I'm not going to bridge is to tolerate bigotry or enforce someone else's bigotry. So in the moment, I was, I tried to have humor. And then I'll just tell this story to lighten it up a little bit. I was on this other coalition involving Citizens United, and I had a particular view of how to fix Citizens United. And then this guy in the coalition, a progressive guy, calls me and he's yelling at me because I had, I guess, the wrong position. And apparently, I did take the phone away from my ear for a second. And I put it back, and then he finished, and I said, are you done? And he said, yeah, what do you have to say? And I said, here, I said, I'm going to teach you, I'm going to give you an opportunity I give my husband, which is, you can have a do-over. I'm going to give you a do-over. You're clearly upset, and I want to have a long-term relationship working on overcoming Citizens United. And so I'm going to have it, if you want to have a do-over, we can have a do-over, and we can start this conversation over, and you can say, hey, Lisa, I'm really upset about this, and then we can talk about it, or you can, fuck off. And he said, I'm taking the do-over option. And we had a very good relationship after that. But, I had to let him vent and then basically interject and try to reset the clock. So and I do that with humor, basically.
That's brilliant.
Nice. I might just point out, too, someone I've really loved with sensitive topics, political topics recently is post-presidency Barack Obama, because he's been really getting into self-deprecating humor post-presidency, and I think it is so disarming, right? Because now you're not on the attack, or someone can feel overly sensitive about it, but he'll make some pretty uncomfortable jokes about liberals and Democrats, and I think it has a really powerful effect of being humble and self-effacing, and then opening up other people to maybe do the same with their views and not be so rigid about how they're approaching things.
Can you speak to the trend of comedy becoming extremely profane and sexual in nature, like a race to be the most lewd and offensive?
Well,
I can. I go to open mics once a week, and I learned early on that I'm not going to drag my friends to those events because they have to listen to jokes about all kinds of stuff that they don't want to hear. But
I can't really address it because it is freedom of speech, and you can push it as far as you want. But if you are using that profanity and the sexual innuendos as a prop to make your material funny, then you better look at your material. Because if you have to be that extreme and audacious, now, this is another, I hadn't thought about it till just this second. Social media, how many screens do you have in your life? The monkey chatter that's out there. How do you break through the monkey chatter of social media and the 1,800 channels you have to choose from? I think in some instances, I can't prove this, but I would think they are doing that purposely, because if you're so extreme that people, and I say, Eli, can you believe what she said or he said? You're breaking through the monkey chatter. So some of that may be very conscious and deliberate, or it just may be they think it makes their material funnier, but I really can't answer it.
I support the freedom of speech, and I do, I feel like I have a line that is, I draw in speaking with my friends about kind of things that I wouldn't ever say, or I probably don't even think them, I don't know. But then I do confess that I might have like a 13-year-old's sense of humor, because to this day, one of my favorite typos in a resume was Bachelor o' Farts. Now that's not too lewd or crude, but it cracks me up every time I think of it. And I felt bad. I sent a note saying, you have an error in your resume. You should fix it for future job postings, you have. But still, I just think it's hilarious. So I don't always have high-minded humor, I confess.
Lisa, I really believe every comedian has an impish 12-year-old living inside them.
Yeah.
They really, yeah.
Absolutely.
Right? Yeah.
It's true. It's true.
I have a question for Matt. May I ask a question?
Yeah, please do.
So because everyone's sense of humor is so different and it's so personal, when you're writing with a team of writers on a TV show and you have several people, how do you find that common ground of humor for that show? And then when somebody comes up with a joke and the other people say, oh no, that's not funny. I mean, how do you manage that so that you're all in alignment with the same style of humor?
That is an excellent question, because as the show runner, the show creator, my job when I'm assembling a writer's room, I made the mistake early on in Hollywood is I hired a lot of writers that thought like me and were funny like me. I don't want that. I learned very quickly. I know how I think. So I would get opposing points of view. I always balanced with age, with gender, as many diverse points of view, because your job as a showrunner is to create one brain in the room so that everyone's seeing the one show. And if the show is clearly defined and you as the showrunner knows specifically what that show is about, you hire those writers that augment and feed the premise of the series. And then ultimately, the final say is the showrunner. And when I was running a room, by the way, as a sidebar, as I'm sitting here listening to Lisa, I thought, my God, I wish I had had her on the home improvement staff. This is who I need for Punch Up. Can you imagine her writing Jill? I mean, you would be that would be great. But you try and get one room, and when I was running a room as the showrunner, they nicknamed me the Joke Buster, because we got a lot of stand-up comedians pitching out one-liners, and I would say, no. And they go, but it's funny. And I'd go, but it's not truthful. And I go, in real life, would Eli really say this at this moment? They go, but it's funny. I go, but it's not truthful. So take the truth and exaggerate that. So my biggest battle in that one brain room was to eliminate what was funny for funny's sake and say, how does it relate to the relationships, the character, what's happening in the moment, and is it relatable? Because the greatest compliment I got from any show I created is when people would elbow the other person and say, that's you.
Right.
And if it's right. And so, did I answer your question?
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
Love that answer. Thank you.
The next question says, Ty, you haven't spoken much. Would you please share a funny anecdote from one of your books? It doesn't actually say that. I just made that up on the spot.
That's perfect.
Well, yeah, sure. I can tell you about a story from here, actually. So I went to undergrad here, University of Colorado. I was in Cheyenne Arapahoe dorm. And at that time in my life, I was just kind of a disaster. I was kind of a little bit of a lost soul. And so I had this resolution: I was going to get my act together, that I was going to be more responsible and pull it together. So I didn't know how to do that, but one of the things I observed of friends who had it together is they got up early. So I said, I'm going to get up early every morning, and these friends who have it together also eat breakfast. So I'm like, I'll get up, I'll eat breakfast in the dorm. So I go up to the cafeteria, and I sit there.
What was the cafeteria called? Do you remember?
What was it called?
Yeah.
Cheyenne Arapahoe Cafeteria. Okay. And I was the only one in there for a couple days, but then...
The reason I ask is because the cafeteria has a funny name now, and I can't remember what it's called, but some... Alfred Packer.
Alfred Packer. Yeah, no, I was not eating there.
Okay.
But this... on the third day, this I sound like a real pervert today, but this beautiful woman.
You're a man who loves love.
I know. It's like, wow. I don't know what's going on with me, but anyways, this beautiful woman walks in, and I'm sitting by the windows on one side, and there's these big windows. She sits on the other side by these big windows, and I'm not exaggerating. The sunshine came in and backlit her, and she looked angelic, and I just thought, oh, wow, you know. And so I did the typical thing, the like junior high dance thing, where I can't bridge that vast divide between us. And so every day I'm beating myself up, like, just go over there, dude, just talk to her, you know, just say something. So she ate salad every day, which one, I don't know why they had salad bar out at that hour or two. I don't know why she was eating it every day, but my brilliant idea was, I'll go get some salad, and maybe there'll be some dumb luck. So I got pancakes every day, and I hadn't really thought this out, so Ellie's up there getting her salad, and I go to get my salad, and I realize these big pancakes are totally covering the plate. But now I'm kind of committed to it, so I'm just like putting salad on top of my pancakes, and garbanzo beans are rolling off the side. I'm like, oh my God. And this was about 2 weeks in to my pining, you know, for Ellie. And I just felt like the biggest ass. And so I was walking back in defeat to my table, and I felt this tug on the back of my sleeve. And she said, why don't you bring that salad over here?
Whoa! Was that in your mind, or?
No, yeah, slapping myself, make sure it was real. One of the luckiest moments of my life, I have to say, to this day. So yeah, so we I'll fast forward through this, but we actually started dating, believe it or not. Yeah, I just totally outkicked my coverage on this, and we started dating. And after about 2 months, she said, would you like to meet my parents? Which, you know, we had the us talk, and like, you want to meet my parents? And I said, sure, you know. Well, her dad was a former offensive lineman in the NFL. Just this hulking man, and it's always intimidating meeting the dad anyways. And so I went out to their house in Cherry Creek and walked up this long stairway to their enormous home. I was super nervous. They dressed for dinner, so I was wearing a sport coat and a tie, and the dad always has the dad handshake where they grab you by the end of your fingers and just crush your hand. And Ellie's dad certainly did that, and he right after the hand crush, I heard this rumbling at the end of the long marble foyer. And around the corner came the largest dog I've ever seen in my entire life. It's like the size of a small pony. And it slammed into the wall, and it squared up at me. And it was about 2 years old. So in human years, it was in adolescence. And just came galloping down the hallway. And I was just petrified. I didn't know what was going on. It came up and it mounted me, as dogs of that age will do. But it was so large, it didn't mount me around my thigh. It mounted me around my neck. And so it's kind of just humping me. And my friends were like, why didn't you do something? I'm like, the human brain's not equipped to handle these kinds of situations. So anyways, that's how my early start got going here at the University of Colorado.
Tie it to Shiro, everybody. Again, his book is awkwardly titled, Awkward, the Science of Why We Are Socially Awkward and Why That Is Awesome. Okay, I have a little PSA here that says, a Palestinian comedian who is very funny and able to make light of the situation is Sami Obeid, O-B-E-I-D, and he is coming to Colorado soon. Please share.
Oh, great. Yeah.
Great.
The next one is, please finish this joke. Trump and Biden walk into a bar, ...
I'm not going first.
Trump
Trump and Biden walk into a bar.
Oh, I got to think
We're all
about
looking
this.
at you, Lisa.
You could add, Lisa, you could add Harry Reid if that makes it easier. Yeah.
Yeah, I gotta think. I gotta think about this, but I don't have a spontaneous reaction.
Well-
Oh, you go. Yes, please.
Well, I was just going to say, people don't know that Trump is dyslexic, so he actually walked into a bra.
Thank you.
Or a rab.
You saved us.
There you go.
Thank you, Eli.
I've got a whole staff of writers up here. You know, if I were staffing a show. Right. That's great.
Wouldn't it be something if Trump started drinking? Oof. Sorry. That's gallows humor. Let's see. Who are up-and-coming comedic writers or comedians we should look for?
I will do a plug for a friend of mine. She's not up and coming because she's a grandmother, but Leanne Morgan, if you've ever had the opportunity to see, she's got a Netflix special, and I've known her for years, and she was a housewife, raised her kids, stayed at home, and started writing comedy, and she literally would drive herself from Knoxville to Nashville, and finally, at this ripe old age, she's gotten traction, and her Netflix special was very funny, and she's just down home. It's very relatable, but she's somebody that always makes me laugh anytime I see Leanne, so you could check her out.
Leanne Morgan.
Leanne Morgan.
Yeah.
Anyone else?
I confess that I have subscribed to Sirius XM, sort of against my will, only because the radio options in my part of northern Wisconsin are limited. So I just listen to the comedy channel. There's like 2 major comedy channels on XM. One is Raw Dog Comedy. That goes to your other question about some of the more raw humor. Mm-hmm. I don't listen to that as much, although I do confess that I listen to some of it. But I just listen to the snippets. And I guess going to your earlier question, there's just so much amazing comedy out there. There's so many talented people in the comedic field, in the artistic field. I was saying to someone the other day, like when I go to speak sometimes at a rally or something, I'm amazed at the signs people make. People are hilarious. Mm-hmm. Not all people are equally hilarious. That's true. Some people are decidedly unhilarious, not funny. But I just, I think we are at in a moment in history where there's a lot of bad things happening, but there's also just this surge in amazing humor and thoughtfulness. And actually, notwithstanding some of the other panels here on polarization, I actually think people are more interested in policy and politics and the world and the climate and the planet and comedy and art than ever before. We're actually living in an age in which there's so much opportunity, there's so many reasons to have appreciation versus just a pessimistic view of the world. And these comedians are amazing, so yeah.
I'll just add that Scott Dickers was asked this question after his keynote, and the 2 names he mentioned were Nick Griffin and Maria Bamford, or Bamford, I believe. So just thought I'd add that. Okay, I think this question is for Ty. Is humor still the best way to pick up a girl? And maybe for Lisa, does it work for girls picking up guys?
Yeah, so they actually have rank ordered, studies where they look at what are the most attractive traits, and they've had, dozens of studies now across thousands of people. So there's actually an empirical answer to this. The best thing you can have are large pectorals, I think. And that seems to be the crowd favorite, kind of broad shoulders, big pectorals, and the V. The next thing would probably be the strong cheekbone, and the nice jawbone would be the next thing. But in the top 10 is a sense of humor. And what the evolutionary psychologists have thought is that a sense of humor is an indicator of underlying intelligence. And they do find correlations between intelligence and humor. It's not there's obviously exceptions to the rule, but yeah, humor can be a good thing. One wrinkle I'll throw in here, though, just to ruin it, is that in studies of long-term marriage, heterosexual couples, women who are married to funny men, sometimes find that, not all the time, but sometimes find that to be a problem. And so it can be related to relationship dissatisfaction because the man uses it as a way to exit the conversation, right? So beware out there.
I was going to say I used humor to pick up guys. Yeah. A long time ago. long time ago. Not just any guy would respond to humor, of course. They have some other attributes they might be looking for that I might not have. But yeah, I also was going to say, now I'm going to praise myself for a moment, which is to say, I told my husband repeatedly, to the point of it not being funny, I'm pretty sure, during the pandemic, that he lucked out because, like, I was not only funny, but I was a pretty good cook. You know, I was like, look, you could have been stuck with someone who can't cook and is not cracking jokes about this horrible situation we're in and trying to survive. And so I reminded him on a regular basis how lucky he was to have me. That does not build, true joy. But because he has managed to love me despite the fact that I've got these many flaws, in fact, I sometimes will say when he's in a particularly critical mood, I'll go, I am a mere mortal. I wish that I don't know how you, such a perfect being, have managed to live with me so long in such harmony, but I am so grateful. And then he realizes that he's perhaps erred in his ways. And, so I do think humor has certainly helped my marriage stay together. And I think my husband thinks that, and I apologize if some of you heard this the other day, but I sing a lot. In the car, on road trips, I sing. I love to sing. I sing around the house. And my husband would say to me, don't quit your day job. And I'd be like, yeah, I'm okay. And then about a decade ago, I did karaoke for the first time ever, and people literally stopped eating mid-bite. It was so bad. I could not, it was like you have a voice for radio, but only talk radio, not for music. And it was Copacabana. The longest, most atonal song ever, and my friend would not let me leave the stage. And I came home to my husband, I said, oh my God, I'm never doing karaoke again. I can't sing. And he said, I know. He said, I've been telling you for years not to quit your day job. And I was like, yeah, but I thought that meant I wasn't gonna be a professional. And he was like, you can't sing. And I was like, you do love me. Oh, yeah.
Have we all gotten too sensitive about humor, feeling offended too easily? People shy away from using humor because they risk being regarded as offensive.
I don't know about that. I'm very, very lucky in my marriage to have a very, very funny husband who happens to be standing back there, Joseph Bennett. Hello. And I'd say that sense of humor is number one or at the top of the list of a happy marriage. We've been very happily together for 24 years. And his brand of sense of humor is not necessarily offensive, but he says the irreverent thing that everybody in the room is thinking about and unwilling to say. And he says it just at the right moment in such a way that it just breaks all the barriers in the room. So I find that if it's done in that way, it can actually unify versus separate. Yeah.
I do think there's some truth to that observation, because I kind of intuitively think, yeah, we are overly sensitive right now and too easily offended. But then at the same time, I'm like, why is comedy so popular right now? So maybe it's the kind of thing where we'll just say we're easily offended, but in fact we want to seek out this more honest kind of conversation about things. I don't know.
Yeah.
So maybe this is one of those moments where I say something that everyone's thinking. Matt, when you were making Where the Heart Is, just how irresistible was Natalie Portman when she was 19 years old?
Natalie Portman is one of the sweetest people on the planet, and when I directed that movie and produced it, Where the Heart Is, she had, as a teenager, had just been emancipated. And in Hollywood terms, that means you can be on the set and live in your trailer, and do the show without parents around. So it was the first time she was on her own. But let me give you an example of the family she comes from and what kind of people they are. In Where the Heart Is, there is a love scene. And in it, the young Nova Lee makes love with this young man. I had to sit down with Natalie Portman's father, talk about the dad thing, and he goes, how are you going to shoot this? What is she wearing? How is it going to be lit? And I said, I promise you, there will be nothing distasteful. She will never feel uncomfortable. I would never do that with an actor. And so he grilled me. But working with her and with Ashley Judd and the experience of that, it was the first film I directed. they were real champions. They forgave me a lot of sins for my ignorance on the set. I will tell one story that was funny, though. Where we shot in and around Austin, Texas, and we were on location. And every morning about 6 o'clock, the crew would come with metal poles and big sticks and chase the rattlesnakes off the set.
Oh my God.
And also, it never went below 100 degrees for like 3 weeks, even at night. So to keep Ashley Judd and Natalie Portman from melting, we brought in huge blocks of ice and those fans you see in NFL games that blow, and blew cold air on them so they could get through the scene. So those are the things you don't think about when you watch the movie.
Thanks for the story. That was great.
That's great.
We have just a few minutes left, and I've run out of note cards. So I don't know. I was thinking maybe just open it up to closing comments or other things that you might be thinking about right now as we've had this discussion.
I'll say one thing about this panel. When I first started doing comedy, it was on The Cosby Show. And I'm not going to deal with the man. I'm going to talk about the show. But one thing Bill Cosby said early on, he said, don't write a joke, paint a picture. Mm-hmm. And as I'm listening to the stories that these three have told, your story about the salad, there wasn't one joke in there. Everyone's story. So it's not jokes, it's painting a picture about human behavior that you can relate to and we laugh at. Mm-hmm. So I feel fortunate to be on this panel because all three of these people are they all got bonked on the head very early on by God with that funny stick.
Yeah, I guess in a similar way, I just wanted to say thank you to all of you for coming. This is my favorite panel, and I've been coming to this for a long time now. But this is obviously very fun. But part of what makes it so fun is that you all come with such a great attitude and are so participatory. So I just want to thank all of you for being such a great audience too. Yeah.
I was going to say, it's also my favorite panel. When they asked me whether I might consider coming back, I said, I would totally come back, and could I possibly do the comedy panel again? Because I have a lot of heavy work in my work world. We're the ones who found the photo of Clarence Thomas and Harlan Crow and Leonard Leo at what I call the outdoor smoking room that made the rounds last year. And so my work is pretty heavy on a regular basis, and this panel brings me enormous joy, and I get to meet the most amazing people and share a stage with them and learn from them and laugh along with you and be part of CWA, which is just this amazing, wonderful experiment in bringing people together who there's no pre-planning. We're just having a real heart-to-heart conversation, and you're a part of that dialogue, and I just feel like it's so special, and I just feel so honored to have the chance to be here with you all.
That's beautiful. Thank you all again, of course, for being here. And in closing, I'd like to recommend a book I read about comedy, and it's called, what's it called? What's that flower that has red petals and thorns?
Oh, Rose.
Rose, what was the name of that book that I read last week? That's how I'm closing this.
Okay, well, we're going to close this down with the question I started off with. How does an audience respond to humor panelists? Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you. That was fun.